Can Latino voters influence outcomes in this fall's general election?
I have always said in order to really transform the election in Arizona, Latino voters have to make up about 20% of the electorate. We are hovering around anywhere from 16 to 17 to 18.
Meanwhile, Republicans are trying in vain to capture more Latino voters.
We have an experience that, for many years that no matter what the Republican Party were to do, it seems like the Latino community as a bloc, when there is such a thing, they tend to gravitate towards the Democrats.
Tonight on Arizona Week, everyone talks about the Latino vote. Here are the people trying to do something about it.
Production of Arizona Week is made possible in parts by a grant from the Stonewall Foundation and by the members of Arizona Public Media. Thank you for your continued support. Once again, your moderator, Michael Chija.
Some predict the biggest Latino voter turnout ever in this fall's election, but it will still lag other groups, and its influence, especially in the presidential and U.S. Senate races in Arizona, is far from certain. We explore what's been called the sleeping giant of politics with 4 interviews. Deyanira Nevares Martinez, State Coordinator for Mi Familia Vota, thanks for being with me.
Thank you for inviting us.
We in the media tend to portray the Latino electorate as a sleeping giant. Is that an accurate or fair portrayal?
Well, I think that that portrayal has been going on for quite some time, and I think that it's fair to a point. I think that the reason that the media started to talk about it a lot more is because we're waking up, and there's signs of that all over, and so that's why I think it's resurfacing more often.
Now, Mi Familia Vota is an organization that works to register people to vote, but also to help people gain their citizenships. Mm-hmm. What kinds of results are you seeing on the voter registration side?
We're having success. This year, we're on track to meet all of our goals for the 3 areas that we're in right now. We have teams in Pima County, in Maricopa County, and we just brought a team on in Pinal County. So we're right on track to meet those goals.
And what are those goals? What kind of numbers are we talking about?
In the Pinal County area, we want to register 300 Latinos. In Tucson, we want to register 1,750 new voter registrations of Latinos. And in the Maricopa County area is a lot more significant, close to 5,000.
And what are your tactics? Do you go door to door? Do you stand in front of grocery stores? All of the above?
We do all of the above. So we have some very good partnerships with some local grocery stores, and we also have a partnership with several community health centers here in the area. And so we stand outside their locations and register people to vote. And we also have a canvassing component where we go door to door. And
you're nonpartisan, is that correct?
Yes, we are.
And what are the barriers that you run into for getting people to register to vote, especially Latinos?
A lot of times people will tell us, well, my vote doesn't count, it won't matter. And so trying to get that education out that it does matter and it does count is very important.
Now, what do you say to somebody? How do you explain to them that their vote does matter?
Well, I think what we do is we explain to the person how the process actually works. A lot of times they say that because they don't understand the process. And so we explain to them that in this country, we're very lucky that our vote does count and it does matter. And so we've had quite a bit of success when we actually explain the process to the person, because a lot of the times it's just a lack of education that they don't understand the process.
Now, getting people registered to vote is one thing, but actually getting them to vote is quite another. And in fact, Latinos are known for their low voter turnout. Mm-hmm. What does your organization do about that?
Well, we have GOTV efforts, and so we do as much as possible to try and get people to go out. But one of the significant things that we're doing is trying to sign people up to vote by mail and trying to sign them up on the permanent early voting list, which we call the PEVL. This gives the person 26 days before the election to look over the entire ballot, to familiarize themselves with the issues, but also it gives us, Mi Familia Vota, 26 days to try and get them to turn it back in. And so that's one of the biggest efforts that we have going on.
Now, early voting has become more of a trend. In fact, in Pima County for the primary election, we understand the vast majority of votes were early voting, but Latinos lag in that area as well, turning in early votes, so you're working to educate people in that regard.
Yes, and the main focus of our canvassing, which is our door-to-door, is to try and sign up Latinos that are registered to vote by mail. We've seen throughout the different elections that Mi Familia Vota has been active here in Arizona that turnout increases significantly when we register Latinos to vote by mail.
And what are the voter identification issues with Latinos, getting Latinos to the poll? Because some of those rules are pretty strict here in Arizona.
Yes, and I think that that's why turnout is increases significantly when you vote by mail, because you don't have those issues of going to the poll and having to have that right then and there. But we do see, for example, Mi Familia Vota has been working on a back-to-school campaign where we register eligible high school seniors to register to vote, and so a lot of the times we'll get to a location and we're signing them up to vote, and a lot of them don't have driver's licenses, because then they'll tell us, well, I don't have a car, why would I need a driver's license? And so that person, if they were to be able to register, wouldn't be able to vote if they show up to the poll, because they don't have a driver's license. And so those are some of the issues we're seeing in the community, and it also affects people who are lower income that can't buy that ID that's about $12, or it also affects people that are older that can't have someone drive them to the DMV to get that ID, and those type of issues. So.
We have just about a minute remaining. In that time, please tell me what you think the Latino voter impact will be in this fall's election, most especially for President and U.S. Senate here in Arizona.
I think it will be really significant. In the last 4 years, since 2008, the Latino electorate has expanded by about 41%, which translates to about 169,000 new Latino voters, which is pretty close to the margin of victory for Senator John McCain in the state in 2008. So I think that in a very close race, that margin can sway an election.
Deyanira Navarez Martinez of Mi Familia Vota, thank you so much for being with me on Arizona Week.
Thank you. Have us back anytime.
Democrats hold sway with Latino voters, but it's not a sure thing that they want to be Democrats or that they will even vote. Here's the state Democratic Party's Luis Heredia. Will the Latino vote make a difference in Arizona in the U.S. Senate race and in the presidential race?
Well, I think we got to look at the Latino vote as part of a coalition of voters that will help change the political rhetoric in Arizona. I think Latinos in general have seen how Republican overreach in this state have really not created a culture of inclusiveness. And I think Latinos will look at this election as an opportunity to share their story. But together, a Latino vote, together with other voters, will change the landscape, and I think will help elect Richard Carmona to the U.S. Senate.
Now, the Obama campaign is saying that the Latino vote can help put Arizona in play in the presidential election. How's that looking 7 weeks from the election?
Well, we continue to keep Arizona in a special column, just because of the demographics of Arizona, and especially looking at turnout among not only Latinos, but independent voters, women, the Native American vote, the African American vote. I mean, it is a coalition. And the Latino vote, being such a significant part of the electorate in Arizona, has kept Arizona in a special column. At this point in time, what the president does, it is all about math and getting to that electoral college. And if they see an expansion that they need Arizona, or they will play in Arizona, they will make that decision. But right now, our focus is to continue working for the president, but also working with a laser focus on getting Richard Carmona elected, because the president will need an ally in the Senate from Arizona. And we feel that Rich Carmona has a great story, and the voters are really, really responding well to him.
Now, does Carmona's ethnicity give him a leg up against Jeff Flake?
I think Carmona's story gives him a leg up more than anything else, than his last name. I think he has a unique story to tell, and the more people get to know him, voters understand that he is truly a great candidate and will be an excellent U.S. Senator.
This is a question that The Atlantic magazine posed in an article this month, and I want to ask it of you. Why do Democrats expect Mexican Americans in Arizona to line up behind a Puerto Rican guy from Harlem? That would be Carmona.
Again, I think it's a story. Rich Carmona, Dr. Carmona has a unique story of being a veteran that went to Vietnam, a individual that went through school from his background himself. So, I think it is very simplistic to just look at just because he has a Latino surname, but the true win factor here is that Dr. Carmona's story connects with the voters in Arizona.
Now, the Latino voter turnout has been an issue for a long, long time and continues to be an issue, although all projections are that it will be up significantly in Arizona and nationally this year. But why does it continue to lag the general population?
Latinos, and I see it in my own family, going on a Saturday afternoon and even a gathering, there is a sense of cynicism in the conversation of, is it real change? And so we have to be very focused on talking to voters, talking to them in a way that connects to their issues. So, and it's pocketbooks. I mean, it is talking about jobs. Latino families have not seen this economy be lifted up, and so that is a major conversation. But what the president is doing, what Democrats are presenting, is a path to move forward instead of what Republicans are trying to put everybody in an ideological box. And that's what the voters are tired of. They're tired of this partisan bickering that has really left out voters like my family members.
Most Latino voters are either Democratic or registered as independents. Are you seeing any shifts in those proportions?
There's more, unfortunately, there's more Latinos registering as like without a party. And that is a trend that is across all populations. But it's unique given the story that Arizona has to share, that the Republican Party has nothing to offer. And we have, as the Democratic Party, been standing up to issues that really matter to Latinos. I think we have to do a better job to communicate that, and that's the test for this election cycle. We feel that we will receive support among Latinos as the Democratic Party, but we still got to do more.
You mentioned issues that might energize Latino voters, and you also talked about the economy and jobs. What other issues are there that are important to Latinos that would get them to go to the polls?
Latino voters, like the general population, have a laser focus on issues like jobs and the economy. The other focus is just the quality of education. They are looking at their future and the future generation, and so they are very concerned on the quality of schools and how our local school districts and our state government is really investing in future generations as part of that economic plan. Other issues, immigration is high up there, but let me say that there is still polling after polling that Latino voters are really concerned about the jobs and what this economy is building.
So immigration, let's talk about that for a minute. Where does it fit in the grander scheme of driving Latinos to the polls or to political activism? Is it less so than it used to be, or is it a media myth that it's that important?
I don't think it's a myth. I think it's an important issue that needs to be resolved. And Latino voters want comprehensive immigration reform. There is a strong support. They want this attack that the Republican Party has really, with people like Jan Brewer and Sheriff Joe Arpaio. They have seen that their solutions on how they are just talking about the border and how they've really misunderstand what the border actually means to the state, which is an asset. I think Latino voters are tired of that rhetoric, and we have to talk about immigration, about solving the problem of immigration reform, which includes border security, but also includes a much more deeper understanding of what the border means to Arizona. And people like Rich Carmona, who was a Pima County deputy sheriff, understand what is the security level, but also what public safety means on solving this issue.
Do you have a projection or a prediction, perhaps, on Latino voter turnout in Arizona?
Well, we are all working extremely hard to increase that number. It's too difficult to assess. It is much more of a post-election. I have always said, in order to really transform the election in Arizona, Latino voters have to make up about 20% of the electorate. We are hovering around anywhere from 16 to 17 to 18 of the registration share. Now we have to meet the people who actually turn out. There's still more work to be done, but I'm optimistic about the growth that has been made.
Republican frustration at not attracting Latinos is palpable. I spoke with Jose Borajero of the Arizona Latino Republican Association. Are Republicans making headway in Arizona with Latino voters who are primarily Democratic in the state?
I'm not so sure that we're making that much headway. It's hard to judge based on what we would think is the traditional values of the Hispanic community. You would think that we are, because the ideas of the Republican Party are more aligned with the ideas of the Latino community than are the Democrats. But there are other issues that apparently have been driving the Latinos towards the Democrats, and I'm not so sure that the Republican Party is doing enough to convey to the Latino community what we're like, and thereby missing on the opportunity to bring them to the fold.
You are Cuban-born and Cuban-American. You epitomize the idea that the Latino vote is not monolithic. How diverse is the Latino vote in Arizona and nationally?
The Latino vote is as diverse as everybody else's vote. In other words, we have people of different points of view. We have people who tend to be more conservative, especially those Latinos who are involved in, for example, in business, where they don't like the idea of so much regulation and from the Democrats. And then we also have a certain portion of our community that has become dependent on the government largesse, and that is, again, not unique to the Latino community. There is Anglos who are dependent on that. Right now in the United States, we have close to 50% of the people who do not pay tax, yet are participants in the benefits of welfare or other kinds of government assistance. And when you have that kind of situation, it's only natural that these people would gravitate towards the party that promises things.
So based on that idea of diversity in the Latino community, can the Latino community, can Latino voters have an influence on the elections here in Arizona, especially for president and U.S. Senate?
Of course, they would have an influence. There's enough of us around. The only thing is that not that many seem to be wanting to vote. And again, there may be a possibility that this particular election will bring more Latinos to the polls. I'm not so sure that that would be the case, because most of the people who are in favor of, say, Obama are not that enthused about it, so they may not be all that happy to or anxious to get to the polls.
So what would draw Latino voters to Mitt Romney, the Republican presidential candidate, and Jeff Flake, the Republican U.S. Senate candidate?
The knowledge as to what we stand for. If they're aware of the fact that, hey, if you are a devout Catholic, you have a home in the Republican Party. If you're for smaller government, less intrusive government, if you don't like the fact that we're killing the, say, for example, the coal industry, if you don't like the idea that we're taking all kinds of steps to against the oil industry, that we're not building a pipeline like we should, and all of these things, if you are in that situation, then of course you would be with us in the Republican Party.
So what explains the fact that recent polling shows that Latinos are favoring Obama by about a 2-to-1 margin right now?
The fact that they're not aware of what we stand for. If they were, they would be more than we would be with us. And that, of course, is partially the fault of the Republican Party and partially the media, because we don't get the exposure that perhaps we should.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of that exposure or some of those issues that are inherent to the Republican Party. What are the key issues as you see them that should be of interest to Latino voters?
Well, again, if you look at, say, a recent Gallup poll where people were interviewed or polled, both Latino and non-Latino, and there did not seem to be a whole lot of difference. The things that were most important to registered Latinos, the same as registered Anglos, was the budget, in other words, the economy, the deficit, jobs, that sort of thing. Immigration, for example, was like 5th or 6th in both groups.
Would you see that here in Arizona as well? Is immigration becoming less of an issue in Arizona, especially for Latinos?
I think it is. The only thing that's keeping it alive is that time and again, we seem to make a big deal out of certain things that happen. For example, the recent executive order by the president giving a waiver to young people that they will not be deported. And I find that interesting because the people who have been waived, they were not being deported before. In the last couple of years, how many of these guys have been deported out of the United States? They have not. But now we have a policy that says we're not, and with big fanfare, and it's a big publicity stunt for the president. And I may say, they have used it very well.
So when it comes to the issues versus ethnicity, would you say that the issues trump ethnicity or ethnicity trumps the issues when it comes to Latino voters?
I would say that once they're informed, the issue is going to trump ethnicity because, let's face it, the most important thing to somebody is the fact that, once you have a job, once you're feeding your family, then you can afford the luxury of being partisan or whatever. But if you're not, then that should be number one.
Now, your own experience having fled Cuba after Fidel Castro came in and established communism as the form of government and economy there, how does that inform your political point of view?
It had a lot to do with it because I am not shy about the fact that I am a devout anti-communist and devout anti-socialist. And anytime I see any hint of that, my defenses go up, and I don't like it. And I have good reason to. Socialism has never worked any place that it has been tried. Any country in the world that has prospered because of ingenuity by individuals, freedom by individuals. This thing of top-down management by the government has never worked successfully any place.
Do you see the Republican Party making inroads with Latino voters in this year's election or in the future?
I don't see them making a whole lot of inroads at this point. And I think the reason for that is that we're not actively seeking, as far as I know. Now, I'm not a spokesman for the Republican Party, okay? I'm just, as an observer, I'm not seeing the type of activity that would lead to that sort of situation. Now, you do have some reason for that. We have an experience that, for many years that no matter what the Republican Party were to do, it seems like the Latino community as a bloc, when there is such a thing, they tend to gravitate towards the Democrats.
We'll close tonight with analysis from Ted Robbins, Southwest correspondent for National Public Radio. Welcome, Ted.
Good to be here, Michael.
You were at the Republican convention in Tampa. What was the Latino outreach like there?
Well, the Republican National Committee had hired a good half a dozen Hispanic outreach directors for swing states. At the convention, they had just about every Latino elected official out there. Susana Martinez, governor of New Mexico, Marco Rubio from Florida, Brian Sandoval from Nevada. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of networking. There's a concerted effort, but whether they reached people who were not already convinced, no idea.
Well, in fact, you were just telling me before we went on camera that the ratings showed that most people who watched the Republican convention had to have been Republican already, right?
Well, I mean, if you believe that everybody who watches Fox is Republican, yeah, because they had bigger ratings than all the other networks. But there were a lot of Latinos, a lot of Latino Republicans are frustrated because they say that the issues should make Latinos Republican, the social issues. And they don't get why, and I think part of it is you can't really call all Latinos the same. I mean, Cuban Americans and Puerto Rican Americans and Mexican Americans may have differing economic situations, different regional situations, so that's a little unfair. And there are also some of the immigration issues that play into it as well.
Especially here in Arizona. So let's talk a little bit about the region. You were in Las Vegas this week to cover President Obama there, and he's pounding Nevada because it's a swing state. Mm-hmm. And Latino voters help make it a swing state. Are there comparisons there with what's going on here in Arizona?
I don't think really. The one comparison is that what we were just talking about is that when you speak to Latinos, they say that Romney's support for SB 1070, and they said this in Nevada too, and his opposition to the DREAM Act, they insult them, is what some of the folks tell me. Of course, those were Democrats, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Republicans aren't getting more Latino voters. Now, in Nevada, it's a heavy organized labor state. The unions on the Strip, in fact, are in negotiations right now, and organized labor, and there's a lot of spillover, I should say, with a lot of workers, culinary workers especially, service workers are Latino, and they're organized. Anybody who's organized is going to have an easier time getting the vote out. So I think it's going to have a much bigger influence in Nevada than in Arizona.
What influence in Arizona will there be from the fact that there's a Latino running for U.S. Senate, Richard Carmona?
Well, you and I have both spoken to people who know about this, and so far the answer is not much because he's Puerto Rican from New York City, and it's not what's going to drive Latinos to the polls. I don't think, based on what people have told me. It isn't going to hurt. It's going to be a matter of whether they can convince people that his story, being Surgeon General and being a SWAT team officer and being a surgeon and pulling himself up by the, quote, bootstraps, if that story is compelling.
So in a half a minute, which is what we have remaining, what will compel Latinos to go to the polls in Arizona? Projections are that they'll go in bigger numbers than ever, but will it be big enough to have any kind of an influence?
An influence, yeah. How much, we won't know until the day after. The time is the short answer. 30 years. When the younger Latinos grow older, and more of them are citizens and can vote.
Ted Robbins, Southwest correspondent for National Public Radio, thanks so much for speaking with me.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
Our full interviews with Heredia and Borrajero are on our website, azweek.com, along with links to in-depth studies of Latino voting trends. That's our program for Friday, September 14th, 2012. For Arizona Week, Michael Chihak.
Production of Arizona Week is made possible in parts by a grant from the Stonewall Foundation and by the members of Arizona Public Media. Thank you for your continued support.